Stacy's Extraordinary Words, written by Stacey Abrams, illustrated by Kitt Thomas. Stacy's Extraordinary Words. Stacy loved words. She loved to read and write and say them. She adored fun words, long words, unusual words, words with wonderful histories and weird combinations. Whenever Stacy learned a new word, it was like making a new friend. First, she would find the dictionary. Then, she would look up where the word had come from and learn its secrets. Did any of its letters hide and stay quiet, like the P in ptarmigan, a bird that lives in cold northern regions? Or were they strong like the I in bright? Next, she wrote the word in her special notebook of extraordinary words. She practiced how to arrange the letters just right, how to sound them out. That's because she loved spelling interesting words most of all. With her favorite words, she would try to remember their quirks, what made them special. When she saw a super long word like onomatopoeia, a funny word to describe the sounds of other words, she had to jump and sway. Words like duckling made her grin. Persnickety tickled her tongue. Sometimes Stacy thought that words understood her better than people did. When she sat by herself during recess, they never teased her about being quiet, or about being clumsy when she fell, or awkward when the joke in her head came out wrong. When she read under the covers, words never told her to go to sleep. Words understood why she was grumpy or anxious. In fact, words helped her explain what she was feeling, if only to herself. One day, Stacy's teacher, Mrs. Blakesley, asked her to wait after class. She squirmed in her seat because she was afraid. Petrified, which is another way to say really afraid. Usually, the teacher only kept a student after class because of a blunder, a mistake. Mrs. Blakesley called Stacy to her desk, and she returned her spelling test. A big red 100 sat at the top of the page. The teacher asked her, "Do you know what a spelling bee is?" "A really smart insect?" Stacy joked. The teacher smiled. "A spelling bee is a contest where students compete to spell as many words correctly as they can. I would like for you to participate." Stacy couldn't believe it.
"Who else will be there?"
"I am nominating you and Jake. The spelling bee is next week." Stacy's excitement suddenly evaporated. Jake was not her friend. He was a bully who knew words too. Just yesterday, he had used a complicated word that made Suki cry. Last week, she heard him say something cruel to Zico about his accent. Stacy thought it was stupendous that Zico knew words in 2 different languages. Stacy knew as many words as Jake did. She wanted to say something when he said mean things to her friends, but she was intimidated. Scared, because sometimes he said hurtful things to her too. She wished she had used her clever words to help Suki or Zico or herself by speaking up. Perhaps at this spelling bee, she would be braver. At the spelling bee, she would not be silent. All week long, Stacy studied her spelling words from school and the ones she kept in her notebook. Still, the spelling bee felt as far away as the longest word she had ever seen. Sesquipedalian, a fancy way to describe words with lots of syllables. The days of the week were monotonous, torturous, and sluggish. Every hour felt longer and longer. Stacy wished for the week to whisk its days away. Finally, the morning of the spelling bee arrived. Stacy walked into the county library with her mother, holding her hand tight. Mama gave her a big hug and whispered into her ear, "Just do your best. Your dad and I are very proud of you." Stacy followed her teacher to the room where the other students waited until it was time to go. Then they went onto a stage. The announcer explained the rules. Kids stepped up to the microphone one by one to get their word. If they spelled it right, the announcer told them so. But if they made a mistake, a bell would ring. The student would have to leave the stage. No do-overs. Stacy's turn finally came. Her stomach ached with nervous energy, but she was ready. Say the word.
Dither.
Sound it out.
Dither.
Spell it.
D-I-T-H-E-R. Dither.
That is correct. The announcer called on the next student, and the next. Promptly, enormous, shutter, transportation, craggy, reception, village. Finally, only 3 contestants remained. Stacy and Jake and a girl from another school. The girl went up to spell her word. Ding! She had spelled chocolate without the second O. We are down to our final 2 contestants, the announcer told the audience. Jake took a long time to spell accept. Stacy got squeezed, but she remembered the lost letters she adored, like Q and Z. Jake tackled clambering. Stacy conquered disengage. Then Jake defeated geometry. Stacy turned to the podium ready to do battle with her next word. She repeated it. She pronounced it. She spelled it.
INSTANTANIOUS. Instantaneous.
As she waited for the announcer, the bell dinged. Ding! I'm sorry, that is incorrect. The proper spelling is... Stacy couldn't hear the rest of what he said. Tears filled her eyes, but she stayed on stage, like a good sport, as Jake got his trophy, and she received her second-place ribbon. Everyone congratulated Jake, and so did she.
Good job.
Jake laughed and rolled his eyes. At least I know the difference between I and E. Stacy felt embarrassed, but she refused to let Jake make her cry.
Well, I misspelled my word, but I do know how to be courteous.
You should try it. She turned away and went to find her mom. If today were like one of the stories Stacy loved most, she would have won. And Jake would have learned that words were a gift that shouldn't be used to hurt people. But things didn't always happen that way in real life. Sometimes change was harder, and it didn't happen right away. Stacy felt a hand brush at her cheek. It opened her fist and smoothed out the ribbon.
Mama?
She put a butterscotch candy on top, Stacy's favorite kind. You okay? I lost. But you came so far, nearly to the very end. Not far enough. I got the letter wrong, and I didn't win. I failed. You only fail if you stop, her mother reminded her. I know there's a word for that. You know it too. Stacy thought about one of her favorite words.
Perseverance. Perseverance.
Exactly. So let's go home and learn more words. There's always next year. Stacy imagined all the words she had yet to meet, new words and new ways to speak up and help others. She'd find them all.
No, Mama. There's always tomorrow.
Author's note. I love words. I can't remember ever not loving them. As a preschooler, when class ended, my parents were still hard at work. Luckily, I attended preschool on the college campus where my mother served as librarian. She would have us nap in the stacks as she continued to work, and I nestled with books and stories and words. Even today, the rich scent of a library or the waft of a freshly opened book makes me smile. Not only were words my companions, they were also my protectors. One day, during first grade, the principal of Anniston Avenue Elementary fetched me from class and walked me outside to one of the trailers that lined the back of the school building. My next memory is of the door opening wide and a lovely woman greeting me, Mrs. Blakesley, my soon-to-be second-grade teacher. Unbeknownst to me, I had been moved up a grade in the middle of the term. As a new kid in class, the strongest, most familiar sight was the books on the shelves near the front of class. My teacher invited me to read as many of them as I wished. In those uneasy first days, while other kids played at recess, I read quietly, unsure of my place, until I opened the pages of a good story. There, I could hide from the older children who teased me and revel in the victories of others. When Mrs. Blakesley chose me for the spelling bee that year, her act of kindness nudged me out of the books and into a world I had never imagined. My first spelling bee combined my greatest joy and biggest fear, talking about words and making mistakes. More than 40 years later, these remained the stalwart axes against which I measure my growth. In that contest, I learned in front of a live audience that chocolate has 2 O's. When the bell dinged, I practiced stoicism before I knew of the concept. And I still recall my mom pressing the yellow candy into my hand, remembering that I, her second of 6 children, loved that color the most. Because of that first lost spelling bee, followed by 4 more close calls until I claimed victory in 6th grade, I discovered how to merge my delight and my terror, realizing that failure is never more than an invitation to try again. Like Jake, some kids picked on me and others who were different. Over the years, I learned how to use my words to do good, even when I am most afraid. I constantly strive to speak up, especially when it makes me nervous. And if I am doing my very best, I make room for those who haven't discovered their superpowers yet. The end.